Hi guys, welcome back to Dimitra's Dishes. So today I'm going to be teaching you how to make Copenhagen. Copenhagen is a Greek dessert that's very elegant and it's perfect for serving a big crowd during the holiday season. If you're having a nice dinner over your house, this is what you're going to want to serve. It's kind of like in between a baklava and a karidopita. It has phyllo all around and then a delicious aromatic nut cake in the center. We're not going to go over the ingredients today because there's just a few steps. They're all very easy to do, but it would be too much for us to go over them. We're just going to go step by step. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make your syrup. Now, this is a sirop dessert. Let me move these things out of the way. So sirop just means syrupy, and anytime you have a syrupy dessert, you want to make the syrup first because you're going to bake the dessert first, and that's going to come out of the oven really nice and hot, and the syrup should always be cold or cooled down. So what I did was I combined some sugar, water, and a little bit of orange juice in my saucepan. I stirred it and cooked it over medium heat until it boiled and all of the sugar dissolved, and then I'm going to set it aside and allow it to cool completely. You can quick cool it if you had to do it in a hurry and say you forgot to make it first. By letting it sit in a bowl with ice, that cools really quickly. But I'm going to set that aside because that's done. You're also going to need some melted unsalted butter. Just cube the butter and then put it in a saucepan and let it melt, obviously. Set that aside because we're going to use lots of butter for this recipe because anywhere there's phyllo, there's butter. Now we're going to talk about the nut meringue, the nut filling that we're going to make. In my mixing bowl over here, I have some unseasoned breadcrumbs. It's really important that the breadcrumbs are unseasoned because seasoned breadcrumbs are always savory at the supermarket, and the last thing you want is a garlicky tasting cake. My favorite breadcrumbs are panko breadcrumbs, but use anything you want. If you have some leftover bread, toast it, dry it up, and just grind it in the food processor, and you'll be good to go. Then the nuts. Okay, so when I make baklava, and this is similar to a baklava, I love to use the combination of almonds and walnuts. You can use any nuts you have on hand, pecans, just almonds, just walnuts, hazelnuts, whatever you have. You're just going to want to pulse them in the food processor. The walnuts are going to go in. Those are pulsed and ground. And then you're just going to lay your almonds on a baking sheet and toast them in the oven at 350 degrees for about 7 minutes or until they get nice and aromatic, and that deepens their flavor. Pop those in the food processor and just pulse them until they're nice and coarsely ground. We're going to add those to the bowl, and then our aromatics and our baking powder. So I have some baking powder, some ground cinnamon, a little bit of salt, and some ground cloves. Now cinnamon is my favorite flavor, my favorite spice this time of year, so I always go heavy. If a recipe calls for a teaspoon, I make sure it's a heaping teaspoon. You do what you like. If you're not a huge fan, just put a little bit. And then cloves also make it really nice and warm. Let me get a fork to mix this. So just mix these. You could do this with a whisk too, just until they're all combined. And that's it. Your dry ingredients are ready. We're just going to set them aside. Now I have some eggs that are separated. This is a really, really light cake that's going to go in the center, and to get it really light, you have to whisk the egg whites first and make a meringue. So both the egg yolks and the whites are going to get beaten, and I want to do it all in the same bowl. But anyway, I have them in my mixer with the whisk attachment. I'm going to beat these on high, and they beat much faster when they're at room temperature. So I'm going to keep beating them until they're really nice and fluffy and silky and shiny and stiff. So our meringue is nicely whipped. I'm going to transfer this to another container, and then we're going to mix our yolks and our sugar. We're going to set this aside. And now in this same bowl, there's no need to even wash it. We're going to put our yolks and our sugar, and we're going to mix these with the same whisk on high speed until everything is combined and really nice and thick and fluffy. I'm also going to put the vanilla extract in here. A heaping teaspoon of pure vanilla extract, or 2. Vanilla and cinnamon are probably my favorite flavors, especially when I'm baking. So I'm just going to whip this up. And just like that, after 2 to 3 minutes, you're going to have a very pale and thick mixture. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add our nut filling in here, and we're just going to whisk it until it's all combined. And then we're also going to lighten up this mixture. Maybe I should unlock my mixer. We're going to lighten it up with 1/3 of the egg whites. Just like that. Now we're going to take everything out and fold the rest of the egg whites in by hand. Now I'm using a stand mixer just because I have one and it just makes it so much easier. You can also do this by hand with a hand mixer. That's completely fine, that works. And now we're just going to mix everything in. We want to mix it very carefully just until the egg whites are incorporated so that way they don't lose their volume. So this can be a very nice and light, airy mixture. So when you fold ingredients, you just bring your whisk around and over. And keep doing that until all of the egg whites are incorporated. And now it's time to assemble the whole thing and put it all together. So you're going to need half a pound of phyllo pastry. Make sure it's thawed out in the refrigerator because it's sold, and it usually comes frozen. It's sold in the freezer section of your supermarket. If it's frozen, you're not going to be able to separate it at all. So you want to make sure you leave it overnight in the refrigerator and then at room temperature in its packaging for a good hour or two before you go ahead and use it. You'll have the best results. It'll be so easy to work with. Now usually the phyllo comes in a long box, and it's one long roll of sheets. This company that I'm using is the one that my supermarket has, and it's still a pound of phyllo, which is what it's usually sold at, but it comes with two little rolls, so I'm just going to use one that equals half a pound. And I'm going to use a 9 by 13 inch baking dish. Any 9 by 13 inch baking dish will work. We're going to begin by buttering the bottom, greasing our baking pan with some butter. Phyllo doesn't have any fat in it, so it needs lots and lots of butter. And actually what I'm going to do here, since these are small, I want them to overhang. So I'm going to do 2 sheets. So I'm going to take one sheet and line one side and have some of the sheets coming out, and the other sheet and line the other side. And you don't have to brush, just drizzle. If you try to brush, the brush is going to get stuck to the pastry and then you'll just have a big mess on your hands. And no big deal if 2 are stuck together. Don't worry about it at all. We're going to have them overhang from the other side. Drizzle in between. And we're going to do that until we have 5 layers of phyllo on the bottom. So now what we're going to do is we're going to fill the center with this nut meringue batter that we've created that's nice and light and airy. Just spread it out. Now we're going to fold these sheets that are hanging over it. Drizzle some butter. And we're going to layer these remaining sheets on top, drizzling butter between each layer. Now with your brush, you can just tuck the edges in. So now you want to take a very sharp knife and just score down through these top layers of phyllo. This is going to make it very easy to slice through later on. So you want to go down the center, and then you can do 2 slits on each side. Now you can make these pieces as big or as small as you like. Turn the pan and then do 3 on this side. That's good. And now just take the rest of this butter and pour it all on top. My oven is preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. This is going to go in the center rack and it's going to bake about 40 to 45 minutes or until it's beautifully golden all on top. I'm going to show you what it looks like as soon as it comes out. The Copenhagen dessert is out of my oven. It baked for 45 minutes and it's nice and golden and piping hot. Now I'm going to bring the camera really close because you're going to want to see and hear when the syrup goes in. The syrup is nice and cold. It should make a nice sizzling sound. The syrup is at room temperature and the dessert is nice and hot. Can you hear that sizzle? We're going to pour the whole syrup over the top of the cake. And surprisingly, it absorbs it pretty quickly. Now we're just going to cut through in all the areas where we scored. And see how easy it is to do once you have those marks in place? Just go straight down. You want to go all the way down to the bottom. Now we're going to let this sit at room temperature for at least an hour. I mean, an hour is just the minimum. It should really stay for a couple hours so that way it can settle and all the syrup can be absorbed. So my Copenhagen cake is done cooling. So you want to leave it aside for a good 2 to 3 hours. You could even leave it out at room temperature overnight, just, so that way if you wanted to make it a day ahead of time, that's fine too. It'll absorb all of the syrup and just be perfect. We're going to cut into it. As you can see, we have 18 pieces here. And I'm going to take the corner piece because I love phyllo. This has like the maximum amount of phyllo. Look at it. Syrupy, sweet, light goodness. Now, serve it as is with some ice cream on the side. I wish I had some whipped cream. I would have whipped some up. If I had some heavy cream, I would have whipped up some whipped cream and dust it on top with some powdered ground cinnamon. Cinnamon is great on everything. And then serve it alongside a nice cup of Greek coffee like I have over here waiting. I cannot wait to bite into this. If you like aridopita, I've shared my recipe way back when I first started the channel. It's my Greek walnut honey spice cake, something like that. I'll link it in the card section up above. You are going to love this. It's just so airy. It's so warm. The spices are just perfect. Your house is going to smell amazing. The recipe, as always, is on the website www.dimitrasdishes.com. I'm getting ready to share my baklava recipe with you. If you guys really want to learn how to make it, comment down below and I'll put that one out as soon as possible. Make this, you guys. You're going to love it. Thank you guys for spending time with me today. I will see you all next time. Bye, everyone.